welcome to the Adoption and Fostering Journal podcast. And in today's episode, we're going to be introducing the April issue of the journal, which is volume 50, issue 2. So I think we should start with some introductions. I'm Vicky Walker, the production editor of the journal.
I'm Dennis Golm, I'm the editor-in-chief of the journal. And then we have,
I'm Anthony Green, and I will be taking over from Vicky when she goes on maternity leave in a couple of weeks' time.
That's right. So I won't be here for a little bit. This is my last chance to witter on about the journal. Yes, but leaving the journal in very capable hands of Anthony, and yes,
Thank
just
you.
introducing him here today. So, shall we start as we always do with the editorial, Dennis?
yeah,
I shall read the title of your editorial, which is Time to Reflect, Effects of Reflective Functioning Interventions on Foster Carers and the Children in Their Care. Um, uh, as usual, you're focusing on one of the articles in the April issue. So tell us a little bit more about that.
yeah. So kind of the featured article, so to speak, is a randomized controlled trial. So it's a clinical trial basically, and randomized trials is how it's kind of the gold standard to conduct
Mm,
um, trials, that you have a comparison group where people are randomized into, or kind of the trial group of the intervention you want to test. And this is a trial conducted by Nick Midgley and colleagues on the reflective fostering program, which is a group intervention that kind of aims to improve carer and child well-being by increasing the carer's capacity for reflective functioning. Another term for reflective functioning people might be more familiar with is mentalization. So it's basically the ability or capacity to reflect on internal states of the self and others, including things like
mm,
emotions, attitudes, wishes, goals. So it's basically when people try to understand or not just see the behavior a child is displaying, but kind of think about what motivates this behavior, where does this behavior come from, right? Because a child could be very dysregulated, for instance, because they are tired, for instance.
yeah, yeah.
Or it could be because they've been in a very overwhelming situation, or it could be multiple explanations, kind of considering where that behavior comes from. And they did a very, very large clinical trial with over 500 participants. I think that most of it delivered online because it was during COVID.
Yeah.
And what they found was that, well, they had one unexpected finding, because they thought the program would improve children's well-being as measured with the strengths and difficulties questionnaire, the SDQ, but it did not. It did, however, show improvements among carers who report uh, among carers. So they reported
Mm.
increased reflective functioning, reduced stress and burnout, and fewer kind of dysfunctional child and carer interactions. So that's yeah. So that's a trial, and maybe we should say that the article's title is the Reflective Fostering Program, Improving the Well-being of Children in Care through a Group Intervention of Foster Carers, a randomized controlled trial.
And
Um,
there's a lot of authors on this one,
it's a
a
lot
very
of
collaborative project. So I think, yeah, Nick Midgley is the first named author. We won't name them all.
And I think the editorial then kind of goes on, and we reflect on a little bit on the um, results of the trial and kind of compare it with, I guess the strategy was to compare it with other interventions targeting foster care, so independent
Mm.
of whether or not they are around mentalizing or reflective functioning, and then also kind of comparing it with other mentalization-based programs outside of the foster care context. And one strategy to look at that is to use meta-analysis, which basically summarize or analyze findings across a number of published studies. Um, and I looked at one of those meta-analyses, and it found generally a positive effect on child well-being in foster care intervention. But the problem was that they did not consider longer follow-up. The studies there only
Mm.
considered like up to kind of a 4 month period, but the trial from Nick Mitchell and colleagues actually had a follow-up period of 12 months, which is
Yeah,
rare and which is really good practice.
yeah,
Um, but one of the kind of one individual study I looked at was the Fostering Changes program, because they also had a sample of over 300 carers involved, and it's a program that tries and teaches foster carers skills to respond sensitively to the needs of children in their care, with the aim of facilitating positive relationships between carers and children. And they did find a small effect on total difficulties, also reported using the SDQ. But they only found this effect at the end of the intervention, directly after the program ended, and it was not sustained at the 12 months follow-up. So this is a good comparison, as they also had a 12 months follow-up, and also they did
mm.
not find a long-term effect on child behavioral difficulty or well-being. Um, and then the other aim was to look at kind of more mentalization-based parenting interventions or outside of the foster care context. And I looked at a systematic review here, so which systematically searches the literature and reports on those types of studies. And it confirms increases in reflective functioning as the Nick Mitchell trial. But the kind of findings on child well-being in this one were also um, mixed, basically. And one thing I found interesting in the Nick Mitchell trial is that the domain with the highest symptoms was kind of hyperactivity, so kind of ADHD type symptoms. Um, and when you look at articles summarizing the evidence, then they would say that while there is evidence for parent trainings on ADHD, obviously ADHD symptoms and ADHD diagnosis are not the same, but if you look at kind of parenting programs, they do have an effect, but the certainty of the evidence base is low. So it's maybe not unsurprising that we didn't see any changes in that um, domain. But I think what we need to highlight here that this is a very large clinical trial,
Yes,
and it's a randomized control trial, so it's really the gold standard of trials.
yeah,
Um, so there is now evidence base for the reflective functioning program, and kind of we do have a problem that we have instances where interventions are offered which do not have an evidence base.
yeah.
So it's very, very important that we stick to the ones that have evidence, because I think that's what we owe to the people who are in need of support. So yeah, so this is a very good, well conducted uh, clinical trial, and you can first of all, read the article, but also we invited Nick to a podcast as well, which we recorded, which is already available. And he also brought along a participant who underwent the program and had lots of good things to say about it.
Yes, Jackie Tripp, who's a kinship carer, and she described the program as life-changing, didn't she? Really fascinating insights from her about sort of the experience of taking part in the program. So definitely worth listening to the podcast. Definitely worth. And it's just such an important study when recruitment and retention are such big issues for foster care. So really important to kind of think about how foster carers can be supported. And as you say, Dennis, there's this evidence base that's being offered for sort of significant improvements to well-being for foster carers, which is only going to positively impact on the children that they're caring for. It was cost effective as well, which is always
Oh yeah.
important. They found it was cost effective to deliver the program. And I think even though initially, I don't think they planned to do it online. I think it was COVID that really
Mm.
influenced that. But I think that the local authorities who've continued offering the program have continued to conduct it online. It works quite well, doesn't it? So that presumably helps with cost effectiveness as well and accessibility of the program too.
So yeah, so listen to the other podcast episode. I can't recall which number it is.
Oh gosh, absolutely
Um,
no idea on the number.
but just listen to all of them, I guess, and find out.
Yeah, yeah, you could do that.
Because we are on over 20 episodes now. I think
We
this is
are,
probably
yes.
episode number 23, maybe.
Around 23, I think. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, give or
yeah,
take.
give or take. Um, so the next article in the issue is exploring conduct difficulties amongst middle-aged children living in care. Is that like 4 to 11, I think, is the age range? Have I got that right? Ooh, I think that's right. By Catherine Anderson and colleagues. Um, Dennis, for those of us who don't know, conduct difficulties, what does that mean? How do they present in children in care?
Yeah, so obviously we have conduct symptoms and we have conduct disorder. So disorder is always when symptoms reach a certain threshold, and usually other additional criteria apart from symptoms are also fulfilled. Um, but it's kind of these can be antisocial types behavior or things like also destroying property or stealing, for instance. These types of behavior would all could all fall under conduct type um, behaviors. And I think in this study they wanted to look at the association between kind of conduct problems and attachment. And
Mhm.
they had like a multi-informant format. So 82 carers filled out again the strengths and difficulties questionnaire, and this has a
Mm.
conduct difficulties subscale. And then the children completed in the story STEM assessment profile, which is kind of a task where children are presented with story STEM, so the kind of the start of the story, and then they can use little figurines of, for instance, animals, and then kind of uh, tell how the story continues, so kind of what happens next. And then those kind of stories are analyzed to gain insight and rated to gain insight into their attachment representations. And the study also had a second part where they had a subsample of 27 children who scored highly on those kind of conduct disorder, um, but who had kind of normal scores for internalizing difficulties, so basically anxiety, depression, these types of symptoms. And they conducted in-depth interviews with them. The kind of first bit of the study did not find a clear link between kind of behavior difficulty level and kind of how children viewed themselves or others. But then the kind of second part, there it seemed like children showed or shared more negative views of adults in their stories, particularly when it was a kind of story about with arousing content or kind of stronger emotions. And also these stories were often harder to follow and less well organized when the children were telling them. And they also say that this kind of highlights how kind of complex behavior problems in children can be, especially for children in care.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. So then moving on, comparing the needs of children in independent agency and local authority foster care in the UK, by Miriam Silver and colleagues. We did have another article about a year ago about kind of comparing IFAs and local authority foster care. Um, Now, what did I decide? That this was in Sweden. But it's really topical for us over here, isn't it? In terms of the breakdown in social care of IFAs versus local authority.
And I feel like there was some overlap with that Swedish article as well in terms of findings.
Findings, yeah.
Um, Here they used an online, so here they kind of compared local authority foster care with independent foster care, and they used an online tool called the Berry Assessment Tool, which is a tool that kind of looks at psychological needs of children and looks at things, behavior, emotional well-being, relationship risks and indicators. Um, and yeah, it's a kind of online tool that is being used.
Mm.
Um, and they kind of compared demographic information about children in local authority and independent foster care, and also looked at their mental health needs kind of at the point of the study and then 4 months later as well. And what they found was that children in independent foster care or placed in independent foster care were typically older with more psychological needs. Um, but they also thought that kind of the across time there was comparable stability of and changes in their mental health outcomes kind of at the follow-up. So what they kind of concluded was that independent foster care agencies might perform an alternative function to kind of local authority foster care, that they may be better equipped to support children with maybe more complex mental health needs, though they did say that this requires further investigation to check that information. Um,
Mm.
but
Yes, as you
yeah.
say, very similar findings to the other article by Evelina Friedel-Liv. So it's from volume 49, issue 1. Um, Social work professionals' perspectives on using independent foster care, a contested way to compensate for organizational failure. And yes, that involved obviously interviews with the social workers or people involved on that side of things. Very similar recruitment issues and providing competence and resources for kind of more complex cases. So those two kind of interesting to look at together.
I think we just discussed it during a meeting that I think roughly, 50% of foster care is provided by independent agencies in the now. Right? So
Yes,
it's a very timely topic to explore.
very much so. Yeah, very much so. So then sorry, I've got a frog in my throat now. Deciding on adoption, birth mothers' motivations is the next article by Ryan Hanlon and colleagues. Um, yeah, a US-based study, this one, isn't it?
Yeah, because sorry to keep with the frog, we're jumping over the pond now to the sorry. This was really bad.
I liked that. I thought that was rather elegant, actually. You've turned my throat into something much nicer and more interesting.
As if you planned this.
As if, yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah, so we're keeping with the bigger numbers there because this one and the next article have also very large kind of sample sizes, similarly to the clinical trial one. In this case, over 700 birth mothers took part in the study, and
Big
um,
number,
they,
yeah. Really
and
big number.
they sorry.
Yeah, it's a big, big number,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah.
It's a great sample.
I think it was even closer to I think it was closer to 800 than
Yeah.
700 even, and they analyzed free text responses, and they identified four key themes: kind of lack of resources and support for parenting, respondents' desire for an ideal family environment for their child, present life circumstances, and beliefs and pressures related to adoption. And they highlighted that many birth mothers listed kind of multiple reasons for placing a child for adoption, which kind of highlights the complexity of this decision. And obviously, the US system is quite different. They have obviously also similar to the UK adoption from foster care, but they also have much higher numbers of people relinquishing their children for adoption. So. So yeah, so this is a kind of very large study that explores that topic. And then we have to jump again to a
The
different
frog is on the move.
Yeah.
Yeah. So social stigma, internalized shame, and psychological struggles in adopted adolescents, a mediated model by Tawkir Abdullah, Pakistan.
Yeah, so kind of we're now in Pakistan, and kind of one issue in Pakistan is maybe that many families hide the fact that a child is adopted because of cultural and religious beliefs, also beliefs that value kind of biological lineage. Um, and they did a study again on over 700 adopted adolescents in that case, so teenagers. They completed questionnaires. Um, and they were kind of interested in the negative impact that kind of stigma, social stigma can have on the development of the young people. Um, and what the findings showed that is when teenagers felt stigmatized, they often kind of started to believe those negative views of others, and they internalized those kind of attitudes of shame, and then they felt unworthy or inferior, and that shame then created further problems. So it became harder for them to regulate their emotions and to form a stable sense of who they are. So in that case, you also say that shame was the kind of key link between social stigma and kind of difficulty, say, experienced in managing feelings and identity building. I think so. This was a cross-sectional study, I should add. So not a kind of study across time, um, but nevertheless quite an impressive sample size and an important topic to explore.
Very much so. And again, a couple of other articles that we've published sort of fairly recently spring to mind. In volume 49, issue 4, we had an article looking at kind of doing adoptive family in contemporary India from Sushri Sangeeta Puhan. Um, Obviously, a slightly different perspective there, and it was adoptive parents who were interviewed about their experiences, but very a similar cultural context in terms of navigating um, a sort of a system that could induce feelings of stigma and how they kind of handled that. So it's quite an interesting perspective. And then we had another article. Keeping secrets, how children in foster care manage stigma. So on the foster care side of things, but again, kind of the topic of stigma, that was March 2019. So going back a little way, but it's a persistently popular topic in our back catalogue, actually. So really interesting there. And so important, isn't it, to get these perspectives of adopted adolescents, birth mothers, to be hearing those voices and perspectives as well.
Yeah, very. So yeah, so I think the theme of this issue is probably big numbers. There's
Mhm.
over 500 and over 700 participants in studies. Geographically, we're in the UK, the US, and Pakistan, and we're hearing kind of from kind of foster carers, birth mothers, and care experienced young people. So yeah, good mix.
The April 2026 issue, Adoption Fostering, Volume 50, Issue 2. Don't forget the podcast interview on the Reflective Fostering Programme as well, available via Core and Bath Conversations. And yeah, goodbye from me for a little bit. But very warm welcome to Anthony. So I don't know where we're going next with the podcast, whether it'll be an author interview or a an introduction, but more content coming soon.
Yes. Bye.
Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Bye bye.